is really quite complicated from just looking at things on the ground. It looks like it's 2, maybe even 3 buildings that are roughly in line, but then when we've surveyed them and you look at the survey results, you can actually see they're kind of slightly kinking as they go along. So it suggests they were built in different phases, and there might have been, houses of people who were related to each other and, extended family or something like that, who expanded their living quarters as time went on. It's just a guess. But the trenches there were pretty interesting. We opened one inside kind of what seems to be the largest building, and just in the middle and across the wall, or across what looked like an entrance. And we thought we might catch a hearth in there. There was a big stone visible, but it turned out to just have tumbled there. But it did turn out to be a pretty interesting trench. And the other trench we opened in the kind of lower part, which seems to be a separate building. So the first trench, we did get the entrance, and we got some lovely paving kind of outside the entrance and stepping up into it and then coming down into the inside of the building. Unfortunately, it had been robbed out probably after the house was cleared, so they pulled up some of the flags and used probably in nearby dikes, or they would have been good stones, so they wouldn't have, just took what they needed. So you can see it was still interesting. You could see where the paving survived. It was very well set, very kind of tidy, and then it had been kind of mucked about with at the edges inside. So it's hard to know. That there could be quite a lot of it, surviving elsewhere in the building, but it's impossible to know without opening more trenches. But I would think that the paving says to me it was probably used for animals, because if you've got animals coming in and out of a building, you want a hard surface. So just a guess at this point, but I think it might have been a buyer, that part. And the other trench was very interesting. Again, we opened that in the hopes of finding a hearth, because the hearth is the kind of center of the house, and it's where people spent a lot of their time. So what you find there is gonna tell you a lot about how they lived, what they used in the house, and so on. And that trench really turned up trumps. We did get a hearth. Sort of typical central hearth for a Highland longhouse. I say typical, but not huge numbers of them have been found, but it's in keeping with the ones that have been found. It was just flat, set in the floor in the middle of the house, and just built of flat stones with a kind of curb around it. And it actually looks like it's sitting on an earlier hearth, a very similar construction that runs right underneath it, at a slightly different angle. And both of them were just where the fires had burned. The stone was very spalled and crumbly and red from the heat. So maybe when the first hearth just got so crumbled, they just thought, well, we'll slap another one on top. And then in time that even the second hearth went out of use, and they built a wall over the end of it, really, over the earlier hearth and over the end of the later hearth. So that suggests that the house stopped being used as a house. They were using it for something else, and they didn't need the hearth anymore. Or maybe they moved the hearth to a totally different place in the house and carried on using it. And the things we found inside were really interesting. Right around the hearth, pottery and glass, the usual finds of pottery and glass, but also a couple of thimbles and a little copper alloy button, and pieces of kind of burnt limestone they work like chalk. You can actually draw with them like chalk, and it could be they were used for dressmaking. And there was somebody they lived in that house that was busy making clothes for his or her family or other people in the township, and kind of a dressmaker in the township. So those were that was really very nice to find that hearth, especially the 2 phases of hearth, because that also suggests that that house was in use for quite a while, long enough for one hearth to wear out and another one to be built, and then for that to go out of use. So it's hard to say how long it was in use, but it wasn't just a generation or two anyway.